Hey guys, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, and so we're going to do another episode of ranking some of the. And what we're going to be ranking some of the today are the songs of Zamrock. So if you don't know, Zamrock is the name given to the music scene in the southern African nation of Zambia. Sort of a garage rocky style that was uh, came about in the 1970s and was basically unknown to people outside of Zambia until probably about 10 years ago. There were some musicologists who dug it up, got some reissue campaigns going on, and it's caught on. I think of pretty much at least all the African styles of music I listen to, it's probably the most rock sounding, classic rock, garage rock sounding. That would be an obvious appeal to Western ears. And so a lot of this, even though most of the stuff was recorded in the mid 1970s, sound quality, it's going to be more reminiscent of garage rock from the mid 1960s. It's definitely not going to sound like Steely Dan or the Alan Parsons Project. Um, it's not going to be as funky like something by Fela Kuti from Nigeria or anybody from Ghana, but it's its own thing. And so I'm going to rank some of the songs. I'm going to do kind of a, we'll start off with some wild cards. I'll do a bottom, although I don't really want to dwell on that. And I'm going to give you what I consider to be my top five Zamrock songs, at least from the stuff that I've heard. Some of what we'll be looking at, I did a video in the past on the story of Zamrock. This is an 8 LP box set that came out from Vinyl Me Please in conjunction with Now Again and Strawberry Rain, who were doing the reissue campaigns. I think most, if not all, of the records from this box set are available individually. Some other records by these or other artists as well. Original Zamrock stuff, I don't have any. It tends to be very expensive, very unobtainium, and if you do find it, it's in very bad condition. I do think Steve Carlson has a few, but we've already dithered for almost 3 minutes, so let's start showing you some records. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a modern Zamrock record. And so this is Which We Intend to Cause Havoc. We Intend to Cause Havoc. This was one of the original Zamrock groups, maybe the biggest stars of the particular genre. Put out some classic albums like Lazy Bones and Introduction back in the 1970s. And then what happened is that the scene kind of fell apart in the late 70s. This band did continue with a more disco-y sound for a couple albums in the 1980s, and then broke up altogether. And most of the members of this band, and in fact a large toll of not just the musicians, but of the population in general, HIV and AIDS hitting southern Africa, a lot of these Zamrock musicians were lost to that. And of course, now that we're in the 2020s, we've lost a lot of people for other reasons, but the original lead singer of which, Emmanuel Jagari Chanda, is still alive. He is the only one still alive from what would be considered the classic scene from the 1970s. This man, Patrick Wamdela, was part of the 1980s lineup. He was kind of doing keyboards and synths. And then the other four musicians involved on this are all Western musicians: Nico Moskovich, Jacko Gardner, Stefan Liloff, and J.J. Whitfield, who've come on recently. And so they put out this album. It just came out a few weeks ago. And so obviously you've got some of the old sound, but of course you've got the influence of these Western musicians. You've got the fact that 40, 45 years have passed by. These guys have heard other things. It's definitely, even though it was recorded in the same studio in Lusaka, it's recorded, it does sound better, and just in terms of recording quality, and sort of intergenerational, because So Keith Cobway of Amanaz, another big group from the scene. He's featured on one of the songs. And then Sampa the Great is from the Zambian hip hop scene. So obviously hip hop has reached them. These two ladies, Teresa and Gamba and Hana Tembo, sing on this as well. I'm curious. I don't know if Hana Tembo is related to Chrissy Zebi Tembo from the Ngazi family, who was another big group from this. So I don't know if she's like a daughter or somehow related. I tried to look it up. I couldn't find any sort of information. One of the songs I really liked on this was the Nishingilili with Keith Cobway, who was the lead singer of Amanaz. So another survivor from the original scene. And there is a bit of a lot of styles going on because you've got some of the stuff sounds like the classic fuzzy guitar, wah wah keyboards and the like. But you can see there's obviously influences of music that's come along since then as well. And there is a documentary about the making of this album, and I'm going to link it somewhere here to talk about that. So that's one of my wild cards because it's not a 70s Zamrock album, but it's sort of a miracle that this album existed, a miracle with Emmanuel Chanda still being alive, and us rediscovering his scene, and enough of us being interested that he's putting out music and kind of putting the focus on a lot of his fallen bandmates and countrymen. Another wild card of mine, so there was the Welcome to Zamrock compilation. I don't have it on a physical format. I did download it. There's actually 2 different volumes of it. I think each is a double album if you get it in a vinyl format. And so the last song on one of them, and I have it burned on a CD in my car, is by someone called Cosmo Zani. It's called Poverty. It's just this instrumental, completely organ-drenched psychedelic jam. It's just craziness. So my bottom was, I'm basically just going to pick my least favorite song from the Welcome to Zamrock compilations and kind of quickly move on. There was a song Mpundu by a band called Tinkles. Tinkles, not the world's greatest band name ever. It's like that song by Cosmo Zani that I just talked about, in that it's an organ-led instrumental, but on this one the organ is cheesy. You got a kind of a screechy, tinny guitar. Recording quality is bad even by Zamrock standards. It sounds like it's a needle drop of a scratchy 45. I think that was the case for some of the stuff on the compilation, probably the only available format for some of that material. But let's move on and talk about my 5 favorite songs, some of which came from the Story of Zamrock box set, some of which did not. And so my number 5 is actually from a group that was not represented in that box set, but it's a group called Blackfoot. This is not the Blackfoot with Rekkid Medlock, the Southern rock guys who might be opening for Lynyrd Skynyrd. No, this is a Zambian group also called Blackfoot with an album called Youth Power. So there they are. I'm going to kind of pick out the first song on this album, When It's All Right. And so the Jackson 5 of Zambia. So this is a little bit groovier than a lot of the other stuff. And so there's an example for you. Number 4 is going to be from one of the albums in the Zamrock box set. And I believe that a few of their songs were on the Welcome to Zamrock compilations as well. So the group is called Crossbones. The album is called Wise Man. And the song I'm going to be featuring is the first track on side 2 called Rain and Sunshine. And so you've got several members, different people singing in different songs. Violet Kafula, who just passed away a few years ago, was one of the few women that were involved in their original Zamrock, which was pretty male dominated. And so Rain and Sunshine I'm picking as my number 4. My number 3 is from probably my favorite Zamrock group, the Ngazi family. So you've got the freaky guitarist Paul Ngazi, the cool ass drummer Chrissy Zebi Tembo. They have an album in the box set called 45,000 Volts, but I'm actually featuring the title song from the Day of Judgment album, Proto Punk and Garage Zamrock. And so they're talking about the Christian Day of Judgment, and while doing a wild garage psyche proto punky jam associated with it. And if that sounds cool, it's because it really is pretty cool. Um, Another one of my favorite groups. This is the only album by Amanaz. We talked about Keith Cobway a little bit earlier. He was one of the survivors who was a guest on that Modern Day Witch album. But this was their album called Africa from 1975. And so, again, a few of these songs are on the compilations. This is albums in the box set. Kala My Friend is a very good song, but the one I'm going to go with is History of None, History of Daman. I always like to describe this song as, I think I did it in a video before, I described it as like if Peter Tosh was fronting early Black Sabbath. So it's that really fuzzy, almost but not quite doomy metal, but the guy doesn't sound like Ozzy Osbourne at all. As I said, he reminds me more of a reggae singer in terms of the way he sounds. And so, History of the Man, wonderful song by this wonderful group, wonderful album. Probably my if I could only have one Zamrock album, this would be the one I have. But my favorite song is going to be by Rekkid Talk of his album Nawanji Warwa Amwishyo. And so basically Rekkid Talk does pretty much everything but the drums, writes all the songs, recorded at DB Studios in Lusaka. And that first song, Who's That Guy? It's just this harrowing song about a guy whose girlfriend is going off with some guy who's got a fancy car. The red big car. He calls it a red big car, not a big red car. I don't know why, but the switching the order of the words red and big around almost seems to make it that much better. I don't know if that's like normal in like Zambian English or if that was a artistic choice that he made, but it makes it sound really cool. And again, it's just a harrowing, sad song about a guy who's really depressed because his girlfriend's running off with the rich guy with the red big car. And so there you go, some Zamrock songs for you. Talked about, of course, the classic stuff from the mid 70s. Showed you the modern day album as well. And so, if you haven't checked out some Zamrock yet, pretty much you can find all this stuff on like YouTube, streaming services, compilation if you think that will satisfy you, or dig into some of the reissues.